Lancelot D'Cunha now joins us. Good afternoon, Lancelot. Thank you so much for taking out time for us as we're talking about buzzing stocks. Can you just tell us first about the hotel industry? Do you think after 7-8 years or maybe slightly more than that in terms of struggle, finally something is changing over there?
Well, yes, I think, the hotel industry, there are two major changes that are happening. One is we've seen over the past couple of years, the hotel companies actually focusing on reduction of debt, either through, selling off properties and reducing debt, or we've seen them, raise funds and then clear off debt through strategic investors. We're also seeing a little bit of pricing power improvement in terms of the room rents, probably because corporates as well as a lot of money flowing into businesses has started to drive the occupancies up at hotels. So it's not really the tourist sector or the tourist segment that is really pushing up the hotel prices in a big way, but I think it's more from the business perspective that we are seeing some amount of revenue, let's say stability, and that's a good sign because having reduced debt and focused on operational efficiency, I think the time will come when, because of the higher rental rates going up, we could start seeing some amount of sustained profitability for a while.
But would you want to buy into the hotel names or you would want to wait and watch?
I think from a valuation perspective, they are still reasonably, I think they're fairly priced. So I would not say that they are cheap at these levels. So I wouldn't really want to buy at this point in time. Maybe if there's a correction in the markets and the stocks do come off by another maybe 5-6% or even 10%, then that would be a level at which one can start looking at adding some of these to their portfolio.
Right, and aviation, that's by any means not cheap.
Yes, I think aviation is not cheap, but aviation at the moment has everything going right for it at this point in time. You've got low fuel prices and you've got very good loads. Passenger loads have gone up despite the fact that we've seen new entrants in the aviation space. We saw Air Asia coming in, we saw Vistara starting operations, and there have also been addition of new aircraft, which means the overall capacity has improved, and yet we see significant occupancy levels on the aviation space. So there is that sustainability going forward, that demand is growing and that's filling up even the increased capacity. So that's a very positive sign. The aviation companies also have brought down debt. The other thing that's happened is that the government has agreed to allow a higher investment by foreign companies, and that could spur off many other strategic investors coming in, and that has probably led to the prices moving even higher. So from a valuation perspective, yes, it's not the right time to buy it based on valuation, but if you want to flow with the momentum, probably a short-term trade, you can look at momentum from the aviation space.
Right, but what do you go out and buy? Names like Jet Airways, which have high debt and high fleet, or maybe you look at SpiceJet, which is a much smaller name, doing very well, has got a new owner. So how would you essentially play this? Because InterGlobe is about $7 billion. So how do you essentially play this? Because all the three companies have different profile within the entire sector.
Yes, I would agree, that the three companies have different profiles, but that also brings to fore the different strengths that each of these companies have. Now, if you look at the strongest of the three would be InterGlobe, and when I mean strength is the strength to be able to sustain the current level of operations in the event of a downturn, or maybe even in the event of higher fuel prices or a slowing down of passenger traffic. So from a safety perspective, though InterGlobe seems to be the highest in terms of price, it also is the most safest of the three, which could get least impacted in case there's a change in the economic environment. So that's why it commands that additional premium. From a valuation perspective, SpiceJet obviously has the highest let's say valuation upside potential if things go well, but given the past that this we've seen, it will take a while for it to get its books in order and to be able to address issues. If there is a downturn, SpiceJet would be the first to get hit on the negative side. So that's why the risk reward ratios, when you look at it, I would still go with IndiGo as it gives the lowest downside and yet allows you to ride on the upside, the momentum that's carrying it forward.
Right. Lancelot, just stay on with us, about 90 seconds remaining for closing. I'll just come back after that to you. If we look at the markets, 25, 26 points down for the Nifty. No real major change actually for the market. It was a very listless sort of a day, and 79.20 was respected at the same time. Once we started falling, we did not see any major support also at the lower level. Tata Motors on your screen down about 1.4, Sun Pharma up about 1 rupee or so, Idea Cellular down 1.3, Adani Ports up down about 1% or so, PNB down 3%, Infosys down 1.7, ITC up about 0.6. Z Entertainment 2 rupees decline, Bank of Baroda down about 2% or so, 173. The entire PSU banking space saw a lot of selling pressure today, or a lot of overall selling coming in. Yes Bank down 1.2, Coal India down 1%, Reliance up 1.3, ONGC down about 0.25%, Cipla up about 1.3%. HDFC Limited up down about 1.3, BPCL down about 0.25%, Tata Power down about 0.6, NTPC up about 0.25%, L&T down 1%, HCL Tech 2% decline, Kane India up about 0.07%, Maruti up about 1.4%, 4,620 for Maruti. Maruti is one name after results, after MSCI inclusion, did underperform for a bit, but now has started to gain momentum again. Dr. Reddy's 1% higher, 3,245. TCS up about 0.25%. IndusInd Bank up 0.13. That's the closing bell that we can see. Markets have shut for the day. Provisional closing at the bottom of your screen, and you can just see that we're down about 25, 30 odd points on a provisional basis, and then probably we could see further adjustment in the next couple of minutes from there. 30 points down as far as Nifty on provisional basis is concerned. SBI down 2.2, Vedanta down about 0.05%, Hindalco up 1%, Tata Steel up about 2.5%, Axis Bank down about 0.6, Tata Motors down about 1.3%. ICICI 270 down 1.3, Bharti Airtel 323. Actually, Bharti is quite interesting because this is a name which was lower, but then it's ended in the green. Top gainer on your screen, Lupin 1872, 3.3% higher for Lupin, 60 to 70 rupees higher. Tata Steel 2.5% higher to 243. It was of course a stocks in news that we are talking about. Cipla up about 1.45, 657. Along with Lupin, even Cipla did see buying. Maruti up 1.3, and as we have been saying that after the MSCI there was some impact over there, but now it looks to be fine. Reliance up 1.3. Reliance was actually the key reason why markets did not fall as much as they should have. In fact, Reliance, ITC both led to some amount of recovery in the last 2 hours of trading session. Dr. Reddy up about 1%, third of the fourth day of straight gains for Dr. Reddy. Bajaj Auto up about 1%. Numbers were definitely not that great, but probably markets had already expected these numbers. Hindalco up about 1% or so, 80 rupees towards close. These names were all flying yesterday. ITC up about 0.8%. As I told you in the last 1 hour, this was one name that came. GAIL absolutely flat, no major change. Let's look at some of the losers as well on the Nifty pack, and let's start with the top losers. So it's all about PSU Bank, PNB down about 3%, 139.3 for PNB. SBI down about 2.5%, 244 for SBI, 10.3 million shares. BOB down 2%. All the three major PSU banks did see huge selling pressure today. IT was the next one, and Chennai is the hub for these companies. 25% of their employees are there, and maybe that's the reason why that sentiment impact was there. Infosys down 1.6. We saw HCL Tech earlier down about 2.5%. Kotak Bank down about 1.5 odd percent, 678 for Kotak Bank. Idea down about 1.4, 140 towards close for Idea. Bharti did recover, but Idea did not recover particularly. BHEL down about 1.4, 1.5. Tata Motors throughout the day was actually closer towards 417-18 mark, but then I think in the last 30 minutes it fell down to about 411, 1.3% in terms of decline towards close. 6.5 million shares as far as Tata Motors is concerned. Let's look at some of the broader markets, what was happening in over there. Let's start with some of the aviation names and the hotel names. So Indian Hotel is up 10% towards close, 104 rupees. EIH was the next top gainer, 10% higher for EIH as well, 127 for that name. GMR was up to 8%, and as we have been focusing, some things have been changing over there. Company has been doing roadshow with a lot of investors, and maybe that's the reason why that name is doing well. It's up some 60% in the last 16-17 trading sessions. There is continuous buying into GMR infrastructure. Jet Airways is the next gainer, 10% higher, 563. Really, Spice and Jet have been the stock of the year, specifically SpiceJet, because that's a name which is given 300+% returns for itself. Godfrey Phillip was up 12%, 1,580. Again, this is a name that has been doing very, very well. Hotel Leela Ventures was up 10%, 21.5 rupees. Z-Learn was up about 11 odd percent. Treehouse Education was up 10%. Second day in a row that Treehouse has seen good amount of buying. Make Money Organics up about 8.5%. Not much apart from this that I can find which probably would catch a lot of attention. These were some of the volume. Okay, Munjal Auto Industries, again a name that we generally don't speak about, but today volumes were 60 lakhs. The name was up about 17 odd percent. So that's a name that did well. TVS Motors was down 5%. It's a clear impact of the November auto sales that came in. IVRCL was down 3%, but IVRCL was up 20% in the last few days or so. So maybe that's why it did see some amount of profit booking. Motherson Sumi, a lot has been going around with Volkswagen, how India sales would happen, and that's the reason it was down about 3%. Dena Bank was a 230 factor stock yesterday, was up close to about 12-13%, but then was down close to about 4% today. Delta Corporation opened up 2% but declined 2%. Of course, they have got a permission to start a new casino in their Delton Suite hotels. We were talking to Lancelot. He is still with us. Lancelot, we spoke about two sectors. What would be your broad view of the market? The listless trade that we are seeing, FIs selling every day. You think they are just waiting for the Fed and the ECB event to get over?
Well, I think, yes, there is a bit of anticipation that, especially fear of the unknown, that how the markets are likely to react if the Fed hikes rates at the December meet. And in anticipation of that, nobody would like to, be invested and then see the portfolio being hit. So yes, we are seeing some selling on that front. And possibly investors who have been waiting on the sidelines will wait for that event to be complete and then start looking for value. So from a flows perspective, we could see flows only after the Fed event is complete, because at the end, after the initial probably, the knee-jerk movement of trying to move money back to the US where required, you would still find people looking at investing where there is growth and where they are finding value. And though India may not be one of the cheapest markets at this point in time, since there is a fairly clear path for growth, we are likely to see that money will then continue to flow in, especially from longer-term investors. So while short-term monies may move out, long-term investors would wait for the event to happen and then start to invest again.
Right, but everyday FII selling, maybe the number is reducing, but you still feel that redemption pressures would continue for a while? India is still an over-owned market, still people would want to reduce their exposure a little bit?
Yes, because from a valuation perspective, India has been the best performing market in the last year to date, and we are among the emerging markets. And then we are seeing the relative valuation. Many of the emerging markets have fallen significantly from their levels, especially along with the currencies. So you've seen huge currency depreciation in the other emerging markets. So on a relative basis, those markets now become attractive as compared to India, given that there's such a major sell-off in some of these emerging markets. So that could mean some reallocation of money from India back to some other countries in the emerging markets, and probably we will continue to see some selling happen that would wind up once the Fed decisions are through and the money that is short term moves out.
Right. How would you look at the telecom pack, Lancelot? Bharti, Idea, Capex being increased, Spectrum being acquired, Reliance Jio giving a soft launch to its employees. A lot of action happening over there?
Well, definitely for the sector as a whole, as well as for the companies as a whole, there's a lot of action happening, because you are seeing, with the Spectrum auction over, now there's a renewed focus in terms of growing the service bouquet and trying to improve services. and you have the Reliance Jio coming in. However, from an investment perspective, we have seen large amount of capital getting allocated to the sector and to companies within that sector. So it's going to take a while before we can start seeing return on capital, moving up, because most of these investments are long-term investments and they will take maybe 3, 4, 5 years to play out. So from a valuation perspective, I think it's better to wait out of these sectors, because we are seeing large capital being allocated to low profit generating sectors, and that will not give a return on capital that is attractive from an equity perspective.
Right. So, but still, don't you think that with Reliance Jio coming in, such sort of disruption is something which was expected by the street, and that's why these names were just clearly underperforming? So does this come in as a surprise?
No, I think Reliance Jio coming in is not a surprise. As well as, like you said, the underperformance of the sector is also not a surprise, because it is expected to underperform given the competitive pressures that you're going to see, as well as the large amount of money that has gone into acquiring spectrum, and the returns on that is going to take a while. So it is a period when nothing much is going to happen from an investor perspective, though there may be a lot of action from a company perspective. And just to draw an analogy to this, it's something similar to maybe an IDFC bank, which got a banking license, had a big boost to its price, but now it's going to take 3 to 4 years before it can actually start generating return on its investors' funds, because it has to lay out a proper business plan, get market share, find its own niche, and that's going to take 3-4 years. So in the meanwhile, you're going to see a flat market for the bank. So similar thing is likely to happen in the telecom space, and that's why we are going to see a very range-bound telecom stocks at this point in time.
Right. Do you think that overall, as far as these telecom companies are concerned, the payment wallets or payment or M-banking, as they are calling it, could be a big thing going ahead? That could be the space which could generate a lot of revenues as well as profits for these companies?
Yes, I think there are two areas which going ahead will be big money spinners. One is obviously the data side, which we've seen a large amount of data getting consumed, and that will start bringing revenues to the telecom companies. And as we see digitization, expand its reach to almost every part of the business and the consumption of entertainment, consumption of services through buying of goods through the internet. So with the mobile becoming the ultimate instrument for computing, you will see data actually adding a lot of value to the telecom companies. The second space, as you said, is the payment banking, because that will be the last mile connectivity through the telecom network, where you could see transactions take place. But that could generate maybe a transaction revenue which might not be that significant in terms of, let's say, value, but it could add to the existing profit. So that could be a profit killer, like what the SMS was maybe 5 or 7 years back. When we were looking at telecom companies, the major profits used to come from the SMS and not from the voice markets. So you could see that, going forward, we could see significant amount of profitability coming from those telecom companies who have already tied in the payment gateways with the final user, and they would share a revenue of the transactions that happen.
Right. What would be your view on GMR? It's up about 56% in the last 10 days. Reliance Infra has done very, very well. Do you think these infrastructure companies which have just managed to survive the problems of last 5-6 years may tend to give good returns? Of course, they may not go to the highs what we had seen earlier, but a good 50-60% or maybe more than that can be expected from them?
Well, most of these infra companies had actually sold off significantly, and whenever market sells off a company, it sometimes stretches it down on the lower end also. So we were in a situation where the valuations of the companies was extremely attractive due to adverse business environment. No investors are willing to look forward in making further investments. However, over the last 12 months, with the change in government, there is a significant change in the business environment as far as infrastructure is concerned and infrastructure companies are concerned. So we are seeing a lot of action on the roads front, on the railways front, on the defense front, which will all spin off into the infrastructure space. So yes, the beneficiaries would be that, initially people are looking for undervalued assets, and with the change in the environment, we'll expect that this will flow back into the infra companies. And that's why we saw this initial, rise. But from here, it looks like we will see a period of stability or maybe consolidation before these companies really start to generate higher earnings and thereby justify the higher prices that have already taken place.
Right. Lancelot, thank you so much for taking out time for us. Always a pleasure talking to you.